Welcome to a deep dive into a story that's often whispered about, in hushed tones. Genesis chapter 38.
Hmm, quite a reputation.
We're going beyond the surface level with this one.
Okay.
To explore the, well, we could say scandalous and surprisingly intricate tale of Judah and Tamar.
You might be thinking, scandalous in the Bible. Oh, just wait. This isn't your typical Sunday school story.
Right.
This one, it grapples with some seriously big questions about righteousness, morality, and those surprising ways God works, you know?
Because we're talking about Judah, one of the 12 sons of Jacob.
Right. Names you might recognize from those epic family sagas back in Genesis.
We're picking up after that whole ordeal with Joseph, being sold into slavery.
Yeah, things are a bit messy.
Understandably.
Yeah.
Judah distances himself from the rest of the family and ends up marrying a Canaanite woman.
And that right there, that's our first clue that things are about to get complicated. Marrying outside the covenant, that agreement between God and the Israelites, that was a really big deal. It wasn't just about, who had the best hummus recipe.
So it wasn't just about food. Okay.
Not quite. It was seen as, potentially straying from God's path for the Israelites, diluting their cultural, their religious identity, Yeah. The source really hones in on this detail, almost like a sign of Judah's internal state. It's like he's drifting, a bit lost, maybe even in a spiritual downslide after everything that's happened.
Okay, so enter Tamar, who becomes Judah's daughter-in-law through marriage to his son, And this is where the story takes its first tragic turn.
Because dies.
Yeah.
The text is pretty blunt about it, actually.
For real?
Her actions are described as evil in the eyes of the Lord. Now, what exactly those actions were is open to interpretation.
Okay.
Some scholars, they believe it might have been related to a refusal to uphold the tradition of levirate marriage.
Which we'll get to in a second.
Right.
Oh, so there's already some mystery baked into the story. I like it.
Exactly. That ambiguity, it invites us to think critically, to ask questions about the cultural context and how those ancient traditions might appear to us today.
So, tragedy strikes. And as you mentioned, there's this custom, this levirate marriage. What was that all about?
Okay, so in a nutshell, if a man died without an heir, his brother, he was obligated to marry the widow to ensure the deceased's lineage continued,
Okay.
But it's about more than just family trees, though. It's about preserving inheritance, property rights, upholding God's promise to Abraham.
Which was?
A promise that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's deeply tied to their faith and their identity as God's chosen people?
Absolutely. High stakes.
High stakes for sure.
And it's this custom, this levirate marriage that sets the stage for even more drama.
Oh, no.
Because, according to tradition, Judah should offer his next son, Onan, to Tamar.
Okay.
But, and this is where it gets really interesting, Onan also dies.
Okay, 2 sons gone. You have to wonder what's going on here. Were they just unlucky? Was there some kind of family curse at play?
That's the thing about these ancient stories. They have a way of making us ponder those very questions, don't they? It doesn't shy away from the complexity of it all. It leaves us wondering about the nature of free will, versus fate, about the consequences of our choices.
2 sons gone. Both under, what you might call unusual circumstances. Makes you wonder if Judah's starting to think, am I cursed?
Right. What's next?
Yeah.
You can almost feel the weight of tradition, of societal expectations bearing down on him. He has 1 son left, Shelah.
Right.
And he's supposed to offer him to Tamar. But fear, that primal human instinct, it takes over.
He's got to be thinking 3 strikes, you're out.
Exactly. He's afraid for his last son's safety, so he delays, makes excuses, essentially leaves Tamar in limbo.
And in those days, a woman's security, her status, it was so closely tied to marriage, to family. So Judah's decision, even if it's driven by fear, it has some serious consequences for Tamar.
Right. He's essentially denying her the future she's entitled to under the very laws that, he's supposed to uphold.
It's like a lose-lose situation.
Yeah. And this is where the story takes that, scandalous turn we were talking about.
Okay.
Tamar, she's not just going to sit back and be a passive bystander.
This is where she flips the script, right? Takes matters into her own hands.
100%. The source tells us that she hears Judah is going to Timnah for the annual sheep shearing festival.
Okay.
Now, this wasn't just some, random event. It was a time of celebration, of fertility rituals.
Oh.
A time when social norms were a bit looser.
Okay, so the atmosphere is like primed for something unexpected. I can practically hear that dramatic music swelling.
Right. And the location where Tamar positions herself, it's significant too. A place called Aine May, meaning two springs. It's almost like a subtle nod, to the double life she's about to lead. The dual identities that Judah fails to recognize.
Those layers of symbolism are incredible. It's like the story is speaking on like multiple levels here. So what does Tamar do? Does she just like waltz up to Judah and say, "Remember me"?
Not quite. She disguises herself, veiling her face,
right,
which was a common practice in those times.
Right.
But it's also loaded with meaning in this context, right?
Oh.
It obscures her true identity from Judah, but it also symbolizes the way women's voices were often, hidden or silenced in that society.
She's reclaiming her agency in a way, taking control of the narrative.
And Judah, he completely falls for it, mistakes her for a prostitute.
And I'm guessing Tamar is fully aware of how this is going to look, how it might be perceived.
Oh, absolutely. She's taking a huge risk.
Yeah.
But she's also playing a strategic game here, a game with the highest possible stakes, her future, her legacy. And as we'll see, the future of Judah's lineage. She demands a pledge for payment, his signet, his cord, and his staff.
Those sound like pretty important items, not exactly like spare change.
They were more than just possessions. The source points out that they represented Judah's identity, his authority, even his potency.
Wow.
By handing them over, he unknowingly makes himself vulnerable to Tamar. It's a brilliant, I think, reversal of power.
Yeah.
A way of holding him accountable for those broken promises.
It's almost like she's playing chess while he's playing checkers. So, what happens next? Does Judah figure out who she is?
Months pass, and Tamar, well, let's just say her plan works a little too well.
Oh.
She finds herself pregnant. The news gets back to Judah. And he, outraged, feeling betrayed, condemns her to death for what he believes is adultery.
Whoa. Talk about jumping to conclusions.
Yeah.
It's interesting, though, how quickly he goes from fear to anger, almost like he's projecting his own guilt onto Tamar.
That's a really insightful observation. It speaks to the complexities of human nature, doesn't it? How easily we can slip into judgment, especially when our own actions are questionable. But here's where Tamar, she delivers the ultimate power move.
What's that?
She reveals those items that Judah gave her. The signet, the cord, and the staff.
Oh, wow.
Undeniable proof that he's the father.
It's the mic drop heard throughout the ages.
It's a moment of reckoning, a complete upheaval of that power dynamic. And the source highlights the number 3 here, representing completeness, fulfillment, even divine intervention. Because guess what? Tamar isn't just pregnant.
She's having triplets.
She's pregnant with twins.
Twins. Talk about adding another layer of complexity to an already tangled web.
Right. It's as if the story's saying, you thought you knew where this was going, think again.
So Judah's caught red-handed, completely undone, confronted with, well, undeniable proof.
It's a powerful moment of truth. And what's amazing is that Judah, he doesn't try to deny it. He doesn't try to shift the blame.
He owns it.
He does. He utters these incredible words. And I'm quoting here, "She is more righteous than I."
Wow. To admit that in front of everyone.
Right. It speaks volumes. It's a complete transformation.
Yeah.
Judah recognizes his own hypocrisy, his failure to uphold the law, to honor his commitments.
Yeah.
And, more than that, he acknowledges Tamar's agency in a society where women were often denied that very thing.
He's saying basically, you know what? She played by the rules better than I did.
Exactly. And it's this admission, this act of humility that really paves the way for redemption. Because remember, this isn't just a story about individual choices. It's woven into this larger narrative of God's plan. Tamar gives birth to those twins, Perez and Zerah, and even their very names reflect all the drama that's unfolded.
Okay, let's talk about those names because I'm sensing some serious symbolism here.
Okay, so Perez, the firstborn, his name means burst forth.
Wow.
Which is incredibly fitting given the unexpected way he enters the world.
Yeah.
And Zerah, his name means scarlet, a direct reference to that scarlet thread Tamar uses to mark him as the firstborn.
Ah, okay. So like a permanent reminder of the twists and turns, the almost unbelievable nature of this whole story.
And it's through Perez, the son who burst forth, that the lineage continues. The source reminds us that Perez becomes an ancestor of King David.
Okay.
And ultimately of Jesus.
Wait, seriously. This story, which on the surface seems so scandalous, is part of Jesus' family tree. That's wild.
It's a powerful reminder that God's ways are not always our ways. That even in the most unexpected places, even in stories that challenge our notions of morality of righteousness, God's plan of redemption is unfolding.
It really makes you think twice about judging people's choices.
Right.
We never know the full story. We never know the ripple effect that even our smallest actions can have.
Genesis chapter 38. It's a story about family drama, about power, deception, and ultimately about the surprising ways that God works through, flawed, complicated human beings. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep asking those tough questions, keep exploring those ancient texts, and who knows what unexpected treasures you might uncover.